Warning, this number might shock you. 1.46 million Americans, equivalent to the entire population of San Diego, left California in just a few years. Not because of the earthquake, not because of wildfires, but because of something even more simmering. An economy that's making the middle class feel suffocated. The rich are moving away because of taxes. The poor stay because they can't leave. And the middle class, the soul of America, is disappearing. The average home price exceeds $700,000. Gas is over $6 a gallon. And every bill serves as a reminder that California is no longer for the average person. The once bustling streets are now only filled with the sound of the wind passing through the office for rent signs. The question is this the future of the entire United States? Let's explore 5 hidden corners, from taxes and housing to social models, to understand why the Golden State is becoming the Gone State, and why this story might be your own. You know, in California right now, a pound of beef costs the same as a pair of sneakers in Texas. And one meal out, it's like a whole week of markets for the people of Florida. And if you fill up an SUV, you'll understand the feeling of a full tank click being as painful as paying income tax. With gas prices around $6 a gallon, every time you drive to work, you're literally burning money. What about housing? The average price in California has exceeded $700,000, double the national average. A 1,000 SQFT apartment in Orange County costs nearly $800,000. And you can still hear your neighbors brushing their teeth because the walls are as thin as paper. The story of John, a 50-year-old engineer, is a prime example. After 30 years in California, he sold his $1 million shoebox to move to Phoenix. There, he had a backyard garden, a luxury that in California only the wealthy could afford. Many people think California's expensive because it's beautiful. The ocean, the sun, the mountains. But that's just the surface. The hidden part is a mountain of structural costs. Complex building regulations make each project millions more expensive. Not to mention land taxes, environmental fees, and permitting procedures that take over 3 years for a new house. And don't forget the invisible tax, time. 2-hour traffic jam for a 10-mile distance. At that time, in another state, people had already gone home, eaten dinner, bathed their children, and watched half a movie. Someone once joked, in California, you pay to see the ocean, and then you pay extra to forget that you don't have time to go to the beach. It sounds funny, but it's true. Most people in expensive areas like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Jose work to survive, not to live. A middle-class couple with an annual income of $200,000, a level that would be a dream in many other states, still has to count every penny for their home, insurance, and gas. California's economy remains strong. GDP is at the top in the United States. But if the economy is the heart, then the cost of living is the blood pressure. And here, it's at a dangerous level. The wealthy can withstand that pressure. The poor are partially subsidized. And the middle class, the people who keep society balanced, are the first to be squeezed. And that's why 1.46 million Americans left. It's not because they hate California, and that's because they no longer have the strength to love it. Now think about it. If you had to work for 50 years to buy a 1,000 SQFT house, is the California dream still worth pursuing? Or you could do what John did, leave to find the most luxurious thing in modern life, a comfortable breath. But if cost is the door in and out, then perhaps the door out is wider open than ever. And that is where we're headed in the next part. You know how people say, money never sleeps. In California, it seems to even know how to move house. 13.3%, a small number with a big impact. That's the highest personal income tax rate in the United States. If you earn over $1 million per year, you could lose nearly 14 cents for every dollar earned, just to the state. And while Texas and Nevada look at you and say, income tax? No, thank you. And so the California golden geese began to fly away. It's no coincidence that recent news reports say the top 1% of the wealthiest people used to contribute nearly 50% of the state's total income tax, and now they are gradually withdrawing. When they left, they didn't just take money with them, they took the lifeblood of the budget. Let's talk about Silicon Valley, the symbol of the tech dream. A major tech company just moved its headquarters to Austin, Texas. They say it's to expand the market, but in reality, it's to breathe easier with a lower tax rate. Their entire accounting team joked, "We saved enough to build another office." A joke, but a bitter truth. You might think, what does it matter to me if rich people leave? It sounds reasonable, until you see the deteriorating roads, budget cuts for schools, and healthcare services as slow as 3G in 2005. Because the top 10% of California's wealthiest people pay up to 80% of the total income tax. When they disappear, who will carry on? The simple answer: we do. The problem isn't that the rich are greedy, but that the system is eating them. Complex policies, cumbersome procedures, and high operating costs mean a small business in San Francisco has to pay 3 times more to survive compared to Dallas. And when you consistently see tax increases, bond measures, and special levies on the ballot, you understand that. No one is really leaving California for the ocean. They're leaving because of their bank statements. Someone joked, California is where you make money the fastest and lose it even faster. The saying sounds funny, but it's a real kind of irony among business people. Because when taxes are so high that the rich are considering leaving and the poor cannot leave, the middle class becomes the only load-bearing bridge, and the bridge is cracking. Just think about it. If revenue depends too heavily on a small group, just a few of them moving to another state, the entire system will be shaken. It's like your house is balanced on a single pillar. If the pillar breaks, the whole roof collapses. And that's the paradox. The richest state in America is losing the very people who pay to keep it rich. So the real question isn't, why are the rich leaving? But rather, what is it about the system that makes them no longer want to stay? Keep that question in mind, because the next part will show the clearest consequence. Wealthy cities are gradually emptying, not because of a lack of people, but because of a lack of reason to stay. There was a time when if you said you worked in downtown San Francisco, people would look at you as if you had just stepped out of a Silicon Valley movie. Coffee is expensive, but ideas are free. The office lights burned brightly all night, and everyone believed they were at the center of the world. Now what? The lights were still bright, but half of the bulbs were only lit because of the timer system. Office vacancy rates in San Francisco have exceeded 35%, the highest in modern history. Each morning, only about 56% of people return to the office compared to before 2019. Simply put, if you walk down Market Street, you'll see a city that's still beautiful. But it sounds like a stage that's closed, with only the wind whistling between the glass buildings. A woman who was formerly a financial manager for a Bay Area startup company. 2 years ago, she drove 90 miles east to Sacramento, bought a house for less than half the price of the tiny apartment I rented before. Now she works remotely, grows a vegetable garden, and every morning she looks at the company bulletin board and sees that the old office just cut another floor of rent. She laughed. Downtown now feels like a museum for the pre-Zoom era. Many people still blame COVID, but the real illness of downtown is cost and expectations. When renting an office costs more than revenue, when going to work costs more than working, when an employee has to spend $3,000 a month just to live near their workplace, people will leave. The company moved its headquarters, employees worked remotely, And then the chain of coffee shops, eateries, and restaurants nearby began to shrink. A silent but thorough spiral. Each empty desk leads to an unsold latte. The saddest thing is, the city is still beautiful, but it's no longer vibrant. San Francisco was once likened to the New York of the West, but now sometimes resembles an Airbnb forgotten midweek. The roads that used to be congested with office workers are now congested with moving trucks. Each empty skyscraper is not just a loss of rental income, but a loss of a heartbeat of the city. Someone once quipped, "Downtown is still busy. It's just busy with for lease signs." It sounds funny, but it's true. A wealthy city is gradually becoming poorer, not because of a lack of money, but because of a lack of reason to stay. You see, 1.46 million people have left California, but the truth is even bigger than that number. It wasn't just people leaving, it was a way of life, a way of believing in work, in community. Now, many people still drive past these glass buildings and wonder, are these offices monuments to a time when we believed success meant being there? And if downtown, a symbol of success, is also cracking, what will happen to those who depend on it? Let's wait for the next point, where we delve into that question. When the real value creators leave, who will be left to keep America going? You know a state is in trouble when it loses a seat in the House of Representatives due to population decline. Yes, that's California after the 2020 census, a first in modern history. A state that once welcomed people from all over is now sending them away, like giving out round-trip tickets. 1.46 million Americans left California in just a few years. It's not just tax-dodging millionaires, but an entire generation of middle-class and skilled workers, engineers, nurses, teachers, tech professionals, and even police officers and firefighters. Those who once formed the backbone of the state are now moving to Arizona, Idaho, Texas, and Florida. They're not angry, they're just tired. A man who once dreamed of retirement in San Diego, blue sea, golden sky, golf every morning. Then he looked at the expense sheet. Electricity bill up 30%, property taxes higher than his pension, and gas prices were through the roof. Finally, he sold the house and moved to Boise, Idaho. Now he fishes every afternoon and jokes that, "Here, every time I open the refrigerator, I don't need to check my bank account first." His story is not uncommon. In 2023, Texas led in domestic immigration from California, followed by Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. And the common thread among those who leave, they are not fleeing poverty. They are fleeing the cost of living decently. Someone asked, "Why are you going?" There are so many opportunities here. Yes, opportunities still exist. They're just no longer proportionate to the price you have to pay. A young engineer making $20,000 a year, that sounds impressive. But after taxes, house, car, and insurance, you know how much is left? Just enough to eat, sleep, and worry. A study by the Public Policy Institute of California shows that those who leave tend to have average incomes and college degrees, meaning they are the group that keeps the economy running. And as they leave, they take with them productivity, taxes, consumption, the very lifeblood of the city. Someone once quipped, "California is still crowded. It's just crowded with for sale signs." Really? Each moving truck leaving the state is a piece of the middle class's memory, squeezed by costs and expectations. Bang was once the destination of the American dream, but now it's where the American dream ends because there isn't enough money for rent. And here lies the paradox. California still has the largest GDP in the United States, but it's losing population to cheaper and more efficient states. It's not because they're better, it's because they make ordinary people's lives bearable. Try asking yourself, if you had to choose between living up to California standards and living authentically, what would you choose? A place with sunshine all year round, or a place where you can turn off the lights without worrying about the bill? Keep that question in mind, because the next part will be a real mirror check. When the middle class and workers leave, who will carry the remaining system? And more importantly, are you already in the suitcase packing group without realizing it? There's a paradox in California. The harder people try to hold on to the American dream, the more they wake up in exhaustion. The top 10% of the state's wealthiest people pay nearly 80% of the total income tax, and the top 1% accounts for half the entire system's budget. Now they're leaving, taking with them the lifeblood of the treasury. And when the golden geese fly away, who will pick up the eggs? No one else. It's the middle class and retirees, the ones who stayed behind, because they still believe things will get better. 1. The family in Sacramento is a prime example. The couple worked for 40 years, paid all their taxes, bought a small house, and planted a rose garden behind the porch. One day, the accountant reported, "Next year's property tax will increase by 12%. The husband could only give a wry smile. The rose garden is probably being taxed by the son now. They thought about moving to another state, but it was too late. Housing prices in Idaho and Arizona had increased by 30% in just 2 years. So they were stuck. Not enough to go, not able to stay. The issue isn't just about taxes. When the budget runs short, public services begin to shrink like a blanket that's too small. Schools are cutting programs, hospitals are short-staffed, and roads are deteriorating. As for electricity, water, and insurance bills, they continue to rise steadily, like grains of sand falling one by one onto the shoulders of the people. A retiree once joked, "I don't need to lift weights anymore because every electricity bill is a mental weightlifting workout." The irony here is, the middle class, the group that once fueled the economy, has now become the lifeblood of the tax system. Any policies for tax exemptions for the poor or incentives for businesses are offset by their own pockets. They weren't rich enough to evade taxes, nor were they poor enough to qualify for subsidies. They are in the middle, just enough to pay, but not enough to live comfortably. And retirees, the generation that built the foundation for California, are having to consider selling their final homes to live more lightly. A 68-year-old man said, "I used to dream of dying in the house I built. Now I just hope to live somewhere where the cost of medicine isn't more than the cost of rent." The saying sounds funny, but it's the quiet truth in thousands of kitchens of a class that once believed in this dream. And that's the domino effect. The rich leave, reducing revenue, taxes and fees are shifted onto the middle class. The middle class retreats, and finally, the system becomes unbalanced. A perfect vortex. So perfect it's scary. Perhaps the California dream is still alive, but now it comes with a monthly maintenance fee. And the question is this dream still worth it if it means paying with your own lifespan and peace of mind? Keep that question in mind, because the next part will go a little further. If this isn't just about California, but the future model for the entire United States, what will you choose? Stay in the dream, or wake up before it becomes a burden? Imagine a new California, where restaurants are still busy, streets are still clean, the sky is still blue, but you don't see as many people like yourself anymore. A place where services still operate perfectly, except for one thing: who pays for it has changed, and who benefits is also different. After 1.46 million people left California, the state still grew in population on paper, thanks to 934,000 international immigrants in just a few years. What's lost is the American middle class. What's coming is global cash flow and manpower. If you look from afar, California still shines like a gem, but it's a gem placed in a glass box. Only a few people have the key. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Silicon Valley. Names that were once symbols of the American dream are quietly transforming into a two-speed model of life. On one side is the high-income group, entrepreneurs, investors, global workers, living in areas with good services, cleverly optimized taxes, and everything running as smoothly as the apps they create. On the other side are the people who once built this city, workers, teachers, drivers, engineers, who are now gradually drifting toward the suburbs, moving further away from the center like satellites that have lost their orbit. A Bay Area taxi driver said, "Back then, I drove engineers. Now I drive robots, self-driving cars testing all over the road." He smiled, but his eyes were a little sunken. The opportunity is still here. It just doesn't speak the same language as me anymore. Behind that wave of transformation, California might be inadvertently shaping America's future economic model. A state with high-end services, a lower population, and a concentration of wealthy individuals and global experts, while the middle class moves elsewhere to live affordably. In other words, California might be becoming America's VIP room. You can still get in if you have enough money, or are lucky enough to be served inside. Ironically, the state that once prided itself on equal opportunity now operates like a subscription model, getting a little more expensive each year, and you have to ask, can I still afford to renew? But perhaps the problem isn't about who California wants to get rid of. And the thing is, the system seems to accept that filtering out the people is the price to pay for efficiency, productivity, and modernity. It's like a company cutting staff to make its financial reports look better. That's not a crime, it's a strategy. And that's precisely why it's more terrifying. So what if this isn't just a California story? If that's a draft for America's future, where each wealthy state becomes a high-service oasis and the rest of the country becomes a cheap belt to maintain the system? The real question is no longer, how is California changing? But rather, are you still in that club? Or are you just being used as a backdrop for someone else's red carpet? Keep that question, because sometimes losing a state isn't as scary as losing one's own place in the American story. Maybe California will still be beautiful, but behind that light are empty streets, abandoned offices, and millions of people quietly packing their bags. It's not because they hate this place, it's because they no longer have the strength to stay. A golden state is now becoming a gone state. And the bigger question is, what isn't California losing? But rather, what are we, ordinary people, losing in the new American model? An America where the middle class disappears, where simple living becomes a luxury, and where freedom is sometimes traded for monthly maintenance fees. Perhaps this is no longer a matter for California. This is a matter for every state and every person, as the cost of living, taxes, and the gap between rich and poor continue to widen. Because when 1.46 million people leave, they don't just take their luggage with them, they take a piece of the American dream. The question is the rest of your dream big enough to stay? I'd like to hear your opinion. If you were in my shoes, would you stay in California, continue to believe in new opportunities, or would you leave and seek a place where your salary is truly valued? Leave a comment below. Share your story, perspective, or even your plans. Because this isn't just an economic story. It's a story about how Americans are redefining what it means to live well. If you find this video thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analysis, where we continue to dissect the silent phenomena shaping America today. This is a space for those who want to understand more deeply, not listen faster. This video does not represent any political, partisan, or organizational views. All data, figures, and examples are compiled from public sources for the purpose of social analysis and commentary. You have the right to disagree, and that's what makes this discussion valuable. See you in the next video.